According to Nigeria's trafficking in persons prohibition law, of course, it was, of course, set up in 2003 and amended in 2015. It is a crime to use minors as house helps. It's on Section 23, subsection 1. It states that any person who employs, requires, recruits, transports, harbours, receives, or hires out a child under the age of 12 years as a domestic worker commits an offence and is liable to conviction to imprisonment for a minimum term of 6 months and not exceeding 7 years.
Well, that law doesn't seem to be doing much to protect many minors who are employed as domestic workers in homes across Nigeria. Every other week, there's a new story of a minor who has been severely brutalized by his or her guardian. Just a few days ago, and even just yesterday, the story broke of a woman who allegedly beat her domestic worker to death and buried her till she was arrested by the police along with National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. Well, this morning we have joining us Seidatu Hamar Adabone, a human rights advocate. It's good to have you join us this morning. Let's go straight into it. Domestic staff, domestic workers, young children playing these roles. Almost every other week there's a new story of abuse of a domestic worker or house help, as they are popularly called by their guardian in this part of Africa. Well, why would you say this continues to happen? Why are we seeing this? It's never stopped.
It doesn't stop. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I think what we are going through is we're driving ourselves back to the slave trade. Parents have children they can't cater for, and they see these minors as their way out of poverty. A family may have, let's say, 5, 12, 20 children, and instead of catering for those children, they foist them off to people that are basically heartless to work as domestic help. There's no way that a right-thinking person can take someone under, excuse me, I know many people do this, and think they are helping. If you want to help, send these children to school. Give them a better chance of living in their villages under their parents' care. You don't have to take these children, bring them to the city, and turn them into slaves. Yesterday, my house domestic help and I were discussing the conditions they found themselves in when they were taken to places like Lagos, Port Harcourt, and Abuja before they came to work with me. The conditions are terrible. These children are starved, they are molested, they are battered, they are treated like substandard human beings. NAPTIP and all other stakeholders in the administration of justice have a very big job in front of them. And we need to be our neighbor's keeper. For the last case, I remember you mentioned, the one day before yesterday, it took someone coming out on Twitter and inviting others to come and help trace the home where this brutalized girl worked. And the video was not funny. The woman kept on justifying her actions. We need to be our brother's keeper. We need to be in touch with our security forces, and our security agencies need to be more hospitable to such reports and to take action. And then in the courts of law, we need to show by example that these things cannot keep on happening.
Yeah, we will get to, the part where, we'll talk about what the community and, every other person in society can do to help. But I would like to understand, because if you look at these videos in the last couple of weeks, there's been one after the other and they keep getting worse. So can you help us understand what brings about this cruelty towards the house help, as they're called, while they have kids in the same house that are better protected? You see an 8 or 9 year old that is brutalized so badly And the stories are endless. I've been online in the last couple of days and I've seen so many of them. So why do you think that the guardians become so wicked to these little ones?
Lack of empathy. Complete, we are, as a people, deteriorating in our morals, our values. We're turning into the substandard human beings we are turning these minors into. I remember a particular case that occurred in Kaduna that FIDA, that's the International Federation of Women Lawyers, had to champion the cause of that particular housemaid. And yes, they were able to get a conviction. People don't regard those minors. Some people are very kind to their domestic help, even when they are minors. But I don't see the reason that anyone under the age of 18 should be bundled off in the first place. There are many adults that are looking for jobs. Some of the factors are they don't pay these minors. And the families in the villages or wherever just need one less mouth to feed. So it works both ways. The families that send out these children are being very cruel. And then the families that take them in, they are not being kind. They're just using these minors, and it creates a pattern. When you have young children yourself in the home, and they see what is being meted out to these domestic help, they do the same. We've seen several cases of sexual abuse where you find a father molesting the maid, the sons molesting the maid, sexually and otherwise. And it has turned into a terrible circle that we need to go back to the drawing board and find our humanity.
All right. Saidatu, how is the law in any way? How is the law failing to protect these minors? Because we can talk about it here. I do recall that we've had this similar conversation here on this channel, and we've advocated for a stop to this menace. But guess what? It still continues, like we've seen in videos that will circulate online. But what is the law? How is the law failing to protect these ones?
You know, the legal system as it stands, we do have the laws. We have the VAPP law, that's the Violence Against Persons. We have the, in some states, the Child Welfare Protection laws. Even before these new laws were enacted, we had laws like the Children and Young Persons laws, Administration of Criminal Justice Act, and the laws as they have been domiciled in the states actually do prevent the minors. But what happens is when it comes to practicalization, utilizing the laws, that's where we have a big gap. Many people don't know that these laws exist. And then even when they know, they somehow find a way to go around the laws, frustrating the system. Like the video I was discussing earlier, the allegation was that the woman was dehumanizing and brutalizing the child. And in the video, it was very clear the woman was saying nothing could be done to her. Nothing could be done to her. We do have many agencies that are working, NAPTIP, National Human Rights Commission. We have the Ombudsman, that's Public Complaints Commission. The Ministries of Justice in practically all the states are willing and able to take up these cases. And even at the police station and Nigerian civil defense level, a lot of things are being done. But we work in a system where we think anything goes. No, we can't continue working like that. We need to know that the buck stops somewhere and action can and should be taken.
Yeah, well, as much as we want the law to, work and work better to protect these minors, it would maybe be a start to end the use of minors, as domestic workers. Maybe we could even start from there. If there can be a law to completely criminalize it and make it go away completely. But I also want to speak about, how members of society can help. If I see, what signs do I look out for? If I see my neighbor with a minor being used as a help, is that already a red flag? Is that already something that you point out to NAPTIP? Or do I wait until I notice that they're being brutalized? And if, that's the case, what then?
To have something like a watch. We need to have something like a neighborhood watch. We live in a society now where nobody wants to really interact with their neighbor. We feel, for those that live in gated communities, they barely know who's beside them. And for those that live in regular areas, you don't want your neighbor that probably is a little lower on the social strata, you think maybe fraternizing with that person, they would come looking for maybe financial aid and etc. No, it's beyond that. Here in the North, we still have this kind of community where you have people like the Meangwa. Meangwa literally means the person, the custodian, or should I say, the traditional head that looks into the affairs of that area. But then, of course, in the government reservation areas and other more affluent areas, it's everyone on their own. But even in advanced countries, you find that there are communities that have, like, let's say, chairmen and welfare officers and etc. We don't know our neighbors. We run away from our neighbors. We need to know who our neighbors are. We need to take care of our communities, because by running away, we're not solving the problem. You could have terrorists as your neighbor. You need to know who your neighbors are. You need to know what's happening in your community. For example, if I know someone that has a maid that is being dehumanized, and I go to bed at night, I'm not protecting myself, I'm not protecting my children, because next thing another neighbor could do the same. And before you can say Jack Robinson, it becomes something like a train. It becomes something like the norm. So we need to be more open, know where we're living, who we're living with, and let's have an interest in the security of our communities. And we need to be as law-abiding as possible, because it doesn't make sense to have an entire community where children are brought on as domestic help and then abused. It will become a serial case. We need to look out for these children, and we should have community heads that such issues can be reported to, and the police need to be better friends to us so that we can report such cases at any time. And it would be very nice to have in every state something like a set of people that such cases could be reported to, and this needs to be publicized as much as possible.
Thank you so much, Saidatu, for joining us. We look forward to continue this conversation some other time, but we do appreciate your time and the way you've actually explained on things that need to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.